To Daily Focus. Sorry I missed so much last week, but had a great time in Florida and seeing our kids and our grandkids and catching up on some stuff there and spending some time. But really enjoyed Thursday, Friday, Saturday in Florida, even though it's pretty hot there. The weather was definitely hot and muggy, but the time with family was precious. Well, we're talking about family today in First Timothy chapter 5. We were going to see that God is going to give a comparison about how the family is reflected in the church and what his design is for the role of the pastor. And so he says in verse number 1, rebuke not an elder, but entreat him as a father, and the younger men as brethren, the elder women as mothers, the younger as sisters, with all purity. Honor widows that are widows indeed, but if any widow have children or nephews, let them learn first to show piety at home and to requite their parents, for that is good and acceptable before God. Now she that is a widow indeed and desolate trusteth in God, and continueth in supplications and prayers night and day. But she that liveth in pleasure is dead while she liveth. And these things give in charge that they may be blameless. But if any provide not for his own, especially for those of his own house, he hath denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. God uses some pretty strong language here, but he's basically saying that the structure in the church is similar to that in the home. And that is that there ought to be honor and respect given to those who are older, and there ought to be a loyalty, friendship, care for those that are your age. So the older people, the older men of the church, you should treat them as fathers, respect them, listen to them, honor them. The same thing as the older women in the church. Look at them as mothers and in that role, and then those that would be younger as brothers and sisters, and that there is a unique dynamic in a brother sister brother relationship, and that is that you can be transparently honest and maybe even pick a little bit at each other as family, but you don't let anybody else do it. There's just kind of this mutual respect and protectiveness that takes place in family. And God is saying that should be what happens even in the church family. He's going to mention widows, and he's going to say when a widow is a widow indeed, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later this week as Timothy unfolds that. But he is saying, you know what, if she is without the support of her husband, if she's without the security of her husband, that is where family steps in, even nephews. But it's people that are caring for her who is a widow indeed. In other words, she lives her life dedicated to the program of God and the designs of God. And so her family comes alongside to meet her needs. I think sometimes churches rush in to care for the needs of widows before allowing the family to meet the needs of the widow. And really the onus, the emphasis is on family, taking care of family. Church is there to model that and encourage that. And maybe in the absence of that, the church steps in where there's not family, or when the family shirks that responsibility. But really, it's family that takes care of family. And so, as the illustration is, if a widow wants to go and live the wild life, if she wants to go and find her security in men, if she wants to find her identity in making herself attractive and making people go gaga all over her, whatever, then let her do that. you're under no obligation. And that's what is, if she liveth in pleasure, she is dead while she liveth. In other words, you have no responsibility. You have no obligation to a widow who is going to live that lifestyle. But if she's going to follow God's designs and she's going to embrace those designs and fulfill those purposes, well, then the security should come from her family. People should come, make sure her financial needs are met, making sure her physical needs are met, and that she has food and clothing and shelter, that she has transportation, that she has a means to live in the world. They ought to make sure her spiritual needs are met, that she is able to grow in grace, that she's able to get to and from church, and that she is always being brought back to the truths and principles of the Word of God for security and identity. These are God's designs. They're a beautiful design. And then he says in verse number 8 that if any provide not for his own, and they have the means, they have the opportunity, but they just don't do it, they have denied the faith. In other words, they are denying God's design. They're not believing God in what he said his design was to do, and they're not fulfilling the responsibility as God designed them to be responsible. They're not believing what God designed is the best design, and they don't believe they have to do what God said they have to do. And so they're denying the faith. They're denying the design of God and doing something different, and they've erred from it. And what really is the indictment is you're worse than an infidel. In other words, Paul under inspiration tells Timothy, listen, there are unsaved people who don't know God, don't know him in his program, do not know his designs. They're unfamiliar, but yet they care for their own. They watch out for their own. They protect their own. And you won't even do that as a born again believer, and God's the one who designed this. There is a real importance in family caring for family, that there is a dependence, that people can depend upon you, and that they can trust you, and that they can find security in your investment in their life. Whether they're a widow or just going through tough time, family should be able to depend upon family. And that's just the way God designed it. And so whether it's that protective agent aspect, or whether it's the aspect of providing, whatever that is, family is what produces that. And so whether I'm admiring and honoring an older person in the church or an older person in my family, whether I'm showing that loyalty and dependability, my brothers and sisters, there has to be that aspect, because family is designed to care for family. I hope that you do that. If not, I hope you'll be intentional in figuring out how to do that. But what a wonderful design of God for us to be able to be dependable for our family's sake. God bless you. I hope you have a great day. I'll look forward to seeing you tomorrow.